Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this video we're going to be reading chapter 2 of High School Musical, Stories from East High Volume 3, Poetry in Motion by Alfonsi. Are you ready to be read to? Then let's begin. Chapter 2. Gabriella, Troy called. We need to talk. Gabriella was chatting with Taylor McKessie. Their scholastic decathlon team was going to sponsor a series of guest lectures, but the team members couldn't decide on a subject. Whoa, Taylor said, seeing Troy rushing up to them. Something sounds urgent. What's up? Nothing, Troy lied. I just need to talk to Gabriella. Alone. Taylor shrugged. Guess I'll see you in chemistry, she told Gabriella. Then she began to walk away. As Troy waited for Taylor to move out of earshot, Gabriella touched his arm. Listen, Troy, I'm really sorry about the note, she began. I didn't mean to... Your note was hilarious, he assured her, and it kept me from being caught sleeping. This isn't about your note. He lowered his voice. It's about Chad. Chad? Gabriella said. She looked confused. To Troy, she also looked really pretty in her silky ice blue blouse and white ruffled skirt. A tiny blue barrette sparkled in her long dark hair, and for a second, he felt mesmerized. Sometimes being close to Gabriella made Troy forget everything else. He wished they could just talk about seeing a movie on the weekend or grabbing a smoothie after school, but this was too important to put on hold. Blinking his eyes, Troy forced himself to focus. After swearing her to secrecy, he quietly explained Chad's problem. I see, Gabriella said when he finally fell silent. So, because of what happened to Chad in grade 4, he hates poetry. Chad doesn't hate poetry, and he doesn't have stage fright either. He likes being the center of attention. Chad is... I don't know. Troy's voice trailed off. Poetically challenged, Gabriella suggested. It's more panic than anything else, Troy said. Gabriella nodded, tapping her chin. So he's got poetry phobia. Troy smiled. Yeah, sure, doctor, he told her. Since that's your diagnosis, have you got a cure for the dude? Cure? You know, like, take 2 nursery rhymes and call me in the morning. Gabriella laughed. I think there's only one solution. You have to talk to him again. You're his best friend. He'll listen to you. I just tried to talk to him. Well, try again, Gabriella urged. You heard Miss Barrington. It's an important part of the grade. Just then, the warning bell rang. They were both going to be late for their next class if they didn't get going. Let's talk after school, Gabriella told Troy. I'll meet you by your locker before basketball practice, okay? Troy nodded. Okay. But it wasn't okay. And by the end of the next class, the situation had gotten worse. Chad's nervousness about the assignment spread like a fever to Zeke Baylor and Jason Cross. Now, more than half of the Wildcats' first-string basketball team was freaked out about the assignment. Troy decided to talk to their teacher. If he just explained how upset the guys were, maybe Miss Barrington would reconsider the whole writing and reciting thing. Maybe she'd decide to give the class a typical multiple choice quiz instead. During his free period, Troy returned to Miss Barrington's classroom, but the English teacher wasn't there. He asked around and found her in the auditorium, standing on stage with the drama teacher, Miss Darbus. "I think a plain black backdrop will be fine," Miss Barrington said to Miss Darbus. Miss Darbus nodded. "If we close the downstage curtain, it will cover this standing set. Then the drama club won't have to move a thing, and you can create a nice mood with the footlights." "Can we have a spotlight too?" Miss Barrington asked. "Of course," Miss Darbus snapped her fingers. "What is a dramatic poetry reading without a spotlight?" Both women laughed. Troy suddenly felt a little nervous approaching Miss Barrington, but then he thought of how Chad had helped him out earlier in class, and he stepped up. "Miss Barrington," Troy called. "Can I talk to you?" "May I?" she said, peering down at him through her black oval glasses. "May you what?" Troy asked. Miss Barrington sighed. "Troy, the correct way to phrase your question is, may I, not can I." "Oh, right. Got it. So, may I?" Miss Barrington nodded. "Yes, speak." Troy noticed a few kids from the drama club hanging close by. He didn't want to broadcast this conversation, so he asked the teacher, May we speak in private, please?" Miss Barrington nodded and led him to the wings. A red velvet curtain hung down, partially blocking them from view. "I'm really sorry to bother you," Troy began, "but this is important." He spent the next few minutes trying to explain how nervous Chad was about next week's poetry reading assembly. Troy tried to convince her to change the event to a regular test, but Miss Barrington remained unconvinced. "Chad's one of the most outgoing students I have," she said. "He won't have any trouble reciting a poem. Don't you remember how much fun he had on stage during East High's first annual Battle of the Bands?" "But to Chad, this is different," Troy argued. "A lot different. In fact, I think he's so nervous he might even have writer's block." Miss Barrington folded her arms. "I'm not going to let anyone off the hook for this assignment, Troy. As I told you in class, this is going to be an important part of the semester grade, and I expect everyone to complete it." "But other kids are nervous too," Troy pointed out, thinking of Kelsey Nielsen as well as Zeke and Jason. "Some of your students are shy. They're not comfortable with standing in front of an audience, let alone reading their own poetry." "Oh, Troy," Miss Barrington shook her head. "That's why this assignment is so important for them to complete. They must learn how to rise to the occasion. But remember when you helped Gabriella during your audition for the school's Twinkle Town musical? I saw how nervous she was, but you helped her overcome her fears, and both of you performed so beautifully. So, if you're that worried about your friends, then you should help them, like you helped Gabriella. And if..." Just then, the drama teacher called out from the back of the auditorium, "Miss Barrington, where are you? I would like you to observe the lighting scheme." Miss Barrington stepped past the red velvet curtain. "I'll be there in a moment," she called from the wings. Then she turned back to Troy. "You know what?" she said. "I'm going to tell you a secret. Next week's special assembly is really in honor of an old college friend of mine. He's an award-winning poet, and I've promised to show him how brightly my students shine when it comes to writing and reciting poetry. Julius is going to judge the poems. He'll be picking the runner-ups and the winner." "Winner?" Troy asked. "Winner of what?" Miss Barrington grinned. The winning poem will be published in the local paper along with the winning student's photo. I was going to keep it a surprise, but I think you ought to tell your classmates. It's just one more reason any student who doesn't do this assignment will be given a failing grade. I intend to see every member of my class recite in front of Julius. Troy tried to think of another argument, but he couldn't. And a moment later, the teacher was gone. Ah, Troy cried in frustration before striding away. Did you hear that? Sharpay Evans hissed behind the curtain. Her brother, Ryan, scratched his head. Huh? No, Lambrain, Sharpay snapped. Ryan had been helping his sister in the wings. She had been poring through a trunk of costumes, looking for the perfect outfit to wear at next week's assembly. That's when they'd overheard the English teacher talking to Troy. Now Sharpay knew the big secret. Next week's assembly is really a poetry contest. The winner will be published in the newspaper. Do you know what that means? She asked her brother. Ryan scratched his head again. There'll be less room for classified ads. Sharpay swatted her brother. I'm going to be famous. Because Ryan still didn't get it. I'm going to come up with the winning poem. I'll get my name and picture in the paper. My poem will be actually published. Then all of my classmates will be totally jealous. Fame is so sweet, I can almost taste it. Oh, please, a voice muttered on the other side of the curtain. Sharpay frowned. Now it sounded like someone was eavesdropping on her. Who's there? She demanded, pulling aside the curtain. It's me, said Taylor McKessie. You've got a lot of nerve listening to other people's conversations, Sharpay cried. Ryan's brow wrinkled. But weren't you and I just... Sharpay's fists clenched. Shut up, Ryan. Sorry, Taylor said. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I was looking for Miss Barrington and someone told me she'd stepped into the wings. Well, she's not here now, said Sharpay. You missed her again, but I've got a newsflash for you. If you're trying to butter her up to win that poetry contest, don't bother. I'm the one who's going to have her poem and picture published in the newspaper. Taylor rolled her eyes. I was looking for Miss Barrington so I could return a book I borrowed from her. She had held up her collection of Shakespeare's sonnets. But you know what, Sharpay? If you're right and this assignment is going to be a contest to get a poem published, you're deluding yourself if you think you're going to win. Is that right? Sharpay folded her arms. Yes. If the assignment was Dancing with Stars, you'd have an advantage, Taylor said, pointing to Sharpay's long legs. But writing good poetry takes a high IQ, so you don't stand a chance of winning. And who does? Einstein net? Sharpay asked. You? Taylor shrugged. I haven't really thought about it. Do you really think you can beat me at this? Sharpay challenged. Taylor sighed. Going head-to-head with Sharpay on a school assignment was really beneath her. But the more Taylor considered it, the more she liked the idea of seeing her own poem in the paper. After all, the words published poet would look awfully good on those future Ivy League university applications. You know what? Taylor said. What? Sharpay snapped. Hands on hips, Taylor stepped forward till the girls were nose to nose. Bring it on. Anyway, that's chapter 3. Thank you for listening to me. I filmed in the early morning this time, so there's cars and crows all driving wasn't too much of a disturbance, but let me know if it was, and I'll go back to filming at 1 AM just for you. I hope you can join me next time as we read Chapter 3 of High School Musical Stories from East Side, Poetry Immersion.